Hey everyone, Eric on paper. I'm Eric, and getting started, you're not seeing me because this is a longer video, and I figured you didn't need an introduction. Drawing Elektra today, and this is going to be one of the longer videos I've done in quite a while. You guys deserve it. I asked a question on Instagram of what characters people wanted to see, and had over 20 responses. I chose Elektra first because multiple people requested her. So, starting off, keep your drawings pretty light, rough. Emphasize a lot of the character's attitude. One thing I like about the character Elektra is that she's pretty aloof, and I wanted to get that sense in her face. When you're drawing any figures, particularly the female figures, you want to get a lot of curves in there, make your lines less rough, even if the character, like Elektra, has a much harder edge. And it's a struggle for me personally because I grew up drawing a lot of monsters and robots and, just generally armored angular things. So I'm used to drawing that. And this has been a long process to get to this point. But just go in, be patient with yourself, erase as needed. And I like this pose that showed off her attitude quite a bit. I didn't feel that the eyes were looking quite right, so what I did was, first off, never swipe another artist's work ever. I don't care what deadline you have or anything like that. What I would say is if you want to take a look at another artist's work and see, oh, this is how they rendered this, or this is how they drew that, and get influenced from that and do your own thing, that's great. So what I ended up doing is realizing, oh, these eyes they're not feminine enough, and it's because I really hadn't emphasized the bottom lash quite as much as I could have. And now I'm just going in, filling in the details and things like that. There's that lash I'm talking about. And with Elektra, I wanted to give her a little bit of that rougher edge that I had mentioned earlier. So even though I've been doing a lot of brush inking lately, I decided to go with the Micron pens for Elektra's inking just to give her that harsher look. One of the things that you'll notice is that the line weight tends to suffer just a little bit and feel a little less fluid and flowing. But it is great for the texturing details for the top of her headgear. I know it's got a name that is utterly escaping me. Please don't correct me in the comments below. This is going to bother me all night. But as I'm working anyway, just keeping in mind all the textures you have to put in there, like the wrap is different than the main part of her garment. And we'll get to her hair later, in which I've decided that I was going to do brushwork for that since it's meant to be flowing. But when you're doing texturing, you're not actually drawing the lines of the piece. What you are drawing is the shadow, so you have to pick a light source. And for me, I don't think I've got to the point yet where I feel confident in doing heavy shadows on the female figure. Maybe I'll get there soon. That'd be great. So I do most of the shadow work in the coloring of the piece and leave it almost like what I would call coloring book style inking. And yeah, just use French curves to anything non-organic. I try to use tools for. I try to get away with it, freehanding it, and well, the results weren't as good, and I thought, okay, just take the extra effort, use the tools, and they'll help you out. There we go. See, now you're working with a brush and getting a lot more flowing hair to the piece. It's an organic shape. It feels real and natural. See, I've got a tendency when I ink figures with a brush to where they look more like Silver Age figures. Like more retro comics rather than contemporary stuff. And mad respect to inkers who use only a brush and can still get that contemporary look. If anybody wants to impart their secrets, please let me know. So yeah, just when you erase your piece, erase lightly and do it in multiple passes. Otherwise, you might smear the ink or lighten the inks, which you don't want either. Okay, now I decided to go with Copic Coloring on this piece to really bring it out. And one of the things I'm trying to do is get the colors richer than before. And doing that, of course, you build layer on layer of color, but start thinking about adding colors that you wouldn't traditionally think. Like, for example, going in with the cool grays for the eyes makes sense, but adding in little specks of blue in there, especially in the shadowing, brings it to life. And blending the greens of her eyes in with yellow, a very pale yellow, is also pretty interesting. And just going with a white gel pen for some highlights. Now with the mouth, of course, I built it up with reds. That's, to be expected. But then what I did is I tried adding a blue shadow in there. And one thing you'll notice is that I did change the position of the ear because it was a bit off. Thankfully, what I was able to do is hide the old ear in her hair, and I just had to move it closer to her face. Now came for me the more daunting part, which was coloring in the skin, because flesh tones are pretty tricky to get right. I mean, you don't want her to look, to look plasticky or like anything artificial. And so what I started experimenting with here was just on the small area of the small exposed area of her gauntlets or wraps, whatever you want to call them, and just filling it in and seeing how much life and depth I could get out of them. And the main thing is I wanted these wraps to feel raised, but also I didn't want to give her just a typical pale skin tone. Because, I mean, she is a Mediterranean character, and I wanted to represent that a bit more with her skin coloration. Leaving, when you're coloring with the Copics, especially looking for a highlight, in this case I decided it was a light coming from above, you can leave some white spots. It helps with the musculature. And what I was doing / working on is how can I make the shadows richer? And what I did with the shadows was add in a bit of blue in there, the same blue I used for her mouth, and then just blend it back in with the brown colors, whichever ones you choose. And that contrast helped get the colors far more richer than I would have expected. With her face, I didn't use much of the blue tone because I wanted it to be a bit softer. Even though Elektra is a dangerous character, I still want to keep that feminine side. With her head wrap, this was kind of an experiment, and I'm just going to abridge this because it's the same for the rest of her body, is just to go in with the colors, build them up. You can either work dark to light or light to dark. I noticed, though, that the highlights were lacking dimensionality, so I went in and added some orange, which really helped it pop. Now doing the hair, it was pretty interesting. I was trying to decide how to render black hair, and traditionally in comics you can just do it blue, but it wouldn't. On a test I did on a scrap piece of paper, I didn't like how it looked and decided to just make her a very dark brunette, or at least color the hair dark brown. And I thought maybe if I diluted it with a cool gray, it would be a happy medium, and that just wasn't really the case. So just stuck with the brown hair. For texturing metal, try to hide as many uppercase I's as you can within your rendering, in the metallic shape to give it that sheen. And I'm pretty proud of how this one came out. The last Elektra I drew was 6 years ago, and it looked terrible compared to this. So thank you. Please like and subscribe for more videos. Hit that bell and keep telling your stories.